Hey everyone, Ace of Clay here, and welcome to another video. In this one, I'll be sculpting a zombie. Since the beginning of time, I've been getting comments from people asking for me to make a zombie, whether it's an astronaut zombie, a mermaid zombie, a banana zombie. People have been asking for it. I figured for this video, we'll start with a human zombie and then work our way up. So, if you're into that, then let's get started. And we're off. First step is, of course, to create the armature. I'm using 12 gauge aluminum wire. Here I bend out the general shape of the zombie's body, attach the arms, and start bulking everything out with aluminum foil. And then quick note, all of the materials that I use in this video are listed in the description box below, along with my affiliate links if you'd like to purchase anything. And then here we're running into our first issue. Can't get the wire back in the leg. Alright, now it's working. Back on track. Alright, and then once I created the shape for the legs, I am just securing them with some masking tape and then doing the same thing for the torso. Once I have everything shaped out, I need to make sure this thing can stand and then get the legs into more of the position I'm looking for. And then to give him more of a hunchback, I'm just adding another piece of foil and attaching that with masking tape as well. Now it's time to cover the whole thing in Super Sculpey. To get these nice thin sheets, I just ran the clay through my pasta machine on the thickest setting. And then, like I say in every video, I have no idea what this thing is going to look like when it's done. I don't create a sketch first, so I'm just kind of letting my hands do their thing. And then as I continue adding clay to this guy, I am smoothing everything out, being sure to get rid of any bumps and creating a nice smooth surface that's ready for details, which will be the next step. No, actually the next step is shoes. Yes, here I'm creating the shape of the front of the shoe in aluminum foil, and then to attach it I'm just pressing it onto the bottom of the leg. Like you see here, nothing special. Because his legs go all the way to the ground, I'm going to form the shoe from the base of his leg. The pants are going to droop around the back of the shoe eventually. And I'm just repeating that same process on the other side. Of course, the second one always takes longer. I don't know why that always happens. And then to separate the sole of the shoe from the rest of it, I'm adding a thin snake of clay around the front and blending one side into the top. Like that. And then repeating that process on the other side. Again, it takes longer again. I don't know why. You'd think that the first time you do something it would take longer than the second time, but for me it's always the first one's easy, the second one's hard. I don't know. Now to create the bottom of the pants, I'm adding a snake of clay and blending the top edge into the leg and leaving the bottom edge as is, sort of pressing it down to shape it out. And then to create some rips and distressing on the pants, I'm just using my X-Acto knife to cut out some tiny little notches, like that. Now it's time to start creating the wrinkles. I'm creating these wrinkles like I always create wrinkles. I just add random snakes of clay everywhere, blending both edges in with the rest of the sculpture, and I think it creates a really cool effect. And these will eventually be baggy jeans. Now the look that I'm going for with this guy is similar to the look that I wanted for my Grim Reaper. I kind of want it to look like the two of them are in the same series, if you will. So, as with the Reaper, I want this guy to have some crazy proportions, starting with these very large, bulky legs. And I promise all of this will make sense soon. Finishing off the wrinkles on the other leg now, making sure to add some around the back, of course. For me, in my work, the back of a standing piece should be as detailed and get just as much attention as the front. Finishing everything off, nitpicking a couple things, and then moving on to the texture for the denim jeans. I use this method on so many things. I'm just rolling the textured edge of my sculpting tool all over the place on the pants. It's going to give me a nice sort of denim texture, and then here you can see the sculpting tool that I sacrificed to be used exclusively for this. I broke off the tip so nothing's in the way and it doesn't hit other parts of the sculpture, and it works great for the most part. And then here's when I thought it would be a good idea to add shoelaces. As you can see, that's not looking too hot. Now I'm distressing the shoes a little bit, adding some nicks, scratches, rips, and then some nice seams up the side. now I'm removing the shoelaces that I don't like. Now to create the bottom of the shirt, I just rolled a snake of clay through my pasta maker to get this nice flat piece, and I'm just cutting out some nicks with my busted palette knife. Now I'm attaching it to the sculpture and blending the top edge in with the rest of the shirt. Now I'm adding a bamboo skewer for the neck, and I'm just doing this now so I can create a collar. Now to create the collar, I am doing the same thing I did for the bottom of the shirt, just on a smaller scale. Now this shirt is looking kind of plain, so I want to add a nice rip in the front, exposing some ribs on this guy. So to do this, I'm using my pointy spoon tool to create an impression in the shape of a rip, and then I'm going in with a small ball stylus to shape out the individual ribs. Looking back, I kind of wish I would have done this in a couple more spots, but I was a little concerned about overdoing it, so I only do it here. And it still looks good, it's fine, the world didn't end. It's all good. Now, I've decided that I want him to have an opened up button-down shirt over his t-shirt that we just finished up. So to make this, I just ran some clay through my pasta maker, cut it to size, and I'm just adding some rips. And then to attach it, I just stuck it to his back and blended the top edge in with his shoulders. To create each side of the front of the shirt, I'm using the same process that I did for the back, and just scaling everything accordingly. Here I'm attaching them the same way too, and then connecting the side of the shirt with the back by pressing them together and blending. Getting everything positioned how I like, adding a couple more rips here and there, and that's looking pretty good. Here I'm creating a little piece for the collar, same way as everything else, and attaching it the same way as well. Now here's a step that I probably should have done earlier, but I'm just adding some wrinkles to the shirt here so that it's not so flat. Now it's time to brush on some clay softener to remove fingerprints, and he's ready for the oven for his first bake. And then out of the oven, after he's completely cooled down, it's time to make the arms. I want one arm to be completely bone, so I'm keeping it very skinny, as you can see here. So that you can see this exposed bone, I'm going to make his sleeve ripped in half. This is definitely going to create some more interest. And then I want the other sleeve to be completely intact, for the most part at least. Adding a few wrinkles to the sleeves here, really pushing that detail. And now it's time to make the hands. I left in the full clip of me creating the hands so you can see how I make them. No cuts here. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I want him to have some very exaggerated proportions, so I'm going to give him very large hands. Aside from going with the style I'm looking for, it made it much easier for me to sculpt them too, not gonna lie. Adding some veins here, getting the textures all finished up, and that's looking pretty good. And to attach the hand, I just poked it into the wire that was sticking out on the arm and blended everything together. Now to create even more interest, I'm going to put the other half of his ripped sleeve hanging from his forearm. I really like how this ended up looking. And then so both sleeves are the same size, I'm just making this one a little larger by adding some more clay to the bottom and blending it in. Now it's time for the other hand. Once it's done, I'm attaching it to the arm, like that, blending it in, and then adding the end of the sleeve. Just nitpicking everything a little bit, and then to create more interest, again, I'm just cutting out a rip in the arm here. Like that, using my X-Acto knife and ball stylus. Now it's time for my favorite part, the head. Here I'm balling up some aluminum foil to create the internal structure, and then I'm covering it with Super Sculpey. I also insert a bamboo skewer so that I have something to hold on to when I'm working on it. And here I just pressed out the eyes with my large ball stylus. I added a little bit more clay just because I made them a little too deep. So we're fixing that. Trying to decide on an eyeball size. And that's looking good. At this point, believe it or not, I'm starting to get a good idea for how this guy is going to look. I've decided that I want him to have one eye, and I want his skull to be exposed on half of his head. And then here I'm just adding some details with the eyelids, the brow bone, cheekbones, and all that. Now to create his lower jaw, I want to give him an underbite, so I'm just rolling out a snake of clay that tapers at each end, positioning it how I like, and then shaping everything out once it's attached. I'm using ball styluses, firm rubber tools, everything that can get the job done. Now for his nose, or lack thereof, I'm adding a tiny pyramid-shaped piece between his eyes, blending everything in, and then poking out the nostrils with a very small ball stylus. Now I do want to give this guy a couple teeth, so I'm just adding them on here and then making his bottom lip a little larger just by adding some more clay, like that. And now it's time to create the part of his face where his skull is being exposed and his skin is sort of tearing away around it. To do this, I just rolled out a thin snake of clay, positioned it to create a jagged edge, and then I'm blending in the outer edge with the rest of his face with my spoon tool. Super easy and super effective. Now I'm just refining his face, adding an upper eyelid to his one eye, and then just putting details here and there until I'm satisfied. I use my Dental Explorer tool to create a crack under his eye socket like that, creating some wrinkles with it too, and just finishing him off and getting him to a point that I'm happy with. And now one of the last steps for his head, I'm going to give him one ear. I have a full tutorial on how to sculpt an ear, so if you want to check that out, it is linked above. And then to create some more depth and dimension here, I'm just adding a little piece of clay for his iris. Normally I just paint this right on the flat surface of his eye, but in this case I want it to stick out a little bit. Adding some final details here, brushing the entire surface with some clay softener to remove fingerprints, and then he's ready to bake along with his body again. Now to attach the head, I'm just using a little bit of Bacon Bond and sliding it onto the skewer on his body. And the reason why I pre-baked his head is so I didn't smash it when I attached it. Then he's ready for one final bake. And now it's time to paint. To match the style I'm going for, I want him to have a very desaturated color palette, lots of dull shades that used to be a part of a nice outfit. For his t-shirt here, I'm going with a light beige, a shade that makes it look like his t-shirt used to be a pure white undershirt. And then to create that shade, I mixed yellow, white, brown, and black. And then once the base coat is dry, I'm going in with a darker variation of that color, just shading some areas. To darken the color, I added some black and brown to it. Now I'm just adding some highlights to all the raised areas, and then to create this color, using my base tone that I created initially, I just lightened it with some more white. And now it's time to paint the skin. To create this color, I used white, black, brown, green, blue, and yellow. Now as you watch this, it may seem like I'm all over the place with the order that I'm painting this guy, but it's really not random. I'm actually thinking ahead. When I put a color down that's up against another color, I want to put the color that's harder to get to, or maybe has a harder edge to paint. I want that to go down first because I know the edge of the second color that's going next to it is going to be easier to paint. So for example, like you saw, I painted the inside of his eye socket before I painted the area around it in the front. It's much easier to paint the white edge against the black eye socket than it is to do it the other way around. Now here I'm just dry brushing some shading around the skull area where it meets the skin, adding some highlights, also dry brushing those with an old paintbrush. Now I'm going to start painting the skin, and then as you can see here, I stop and I end up painting the eye first. This goes back to what I just said. It's going to be easier for me to paint the skin color around the eyeball than it is to paint the eyeball around the skin color. And then once I have that done, I'm just going back in, finishing up the skin using a fine paintbrush to paint the eyelids around the eyeball, and then where the ripped open skin meets the exposed skull. Alright, so one thing that you probably don't know because of good old editing is that I have to take a lot of breaks when I'm sculpting, especially with this zombie, which is why I'm bringing this up here. There's nothing wrong with stepping away from your work for a little bit. For me personally, if I don't know what to do, which is pretty much the case with everything I make, or if I don't like how something's coming out, or even if I just don't feel like sculpting that day, I have to tell myself that it's okay. The world isn't going to end. In my case, when this happens, I have to just put it down, because if I keep going, I'm going to end up ruining what I'm working on, and that's just obviously going to stress me out even more. And then more than likely the next day when I wake up or whenever I decide to get back to it, I'll feel recharged and I'll do much better work. Not saying that it only takes sleeping on it to solve everything. Trust me, I know what burnout is, and I've had it for extremely long periods of time in the past. So just know that if this ever happens to you, you're not alone. There's nothing wrong with it, and there's certainly nothing wrong with just not feeling like it. Okay, now back to narrating. Time to paint the shirt. I'm going with this nice reddish color. And to make this, I believe I used red, brown, black, and white. Then I missed a spot there, so I went in and filled that in. Painting the whole surface of the shirt, this nice red color that is toned down, of course. Painting the iris, having it be raised off of the eyeball like that makes it much easier to get a perfect circle. Lightening it in the middle a little bit. And then adding the pupil, very tiny zombie pupil. Now I'm painting his jeans, starting with a nice dark blue. To create this, I used primary blue, black, white, and brown. And then to create some reflections on his iris, just dabbing on 2 white dots with a paintbrush, detailing his teeth, highlighting his jeans. And then because I really feel like adding another half hour to this guy, I decide to give his shirt a nice plaid pattern. So I'm just going in with a darker red shade and painting that pattern all over the place. And I'm really glad that I did this. It did make it take a lot longer than it needed to take, but whatever. I'm happy with it, and it really adds another level of detail that I really like. So I'm happy that I went the extra mile. And then because of the style that I went for with this guy, I was not concerned at all about the lines being straight. As you can see, they actually add a little bit more character. And the shirt's finally done. Now it's time to paint his shoes dark brown. And then while they're still wet, I go in with a little bit of gray just to give them some more dimension. And then adding some brown to the jeans, making them look a little dirty, shading the ribs that are exposed under his t-shirt. And then to create some mud splatters, I'm just flicking some watered down brown paint onto the bottom of his pants and shoes with a toothbrush. And then here I'm just adding some more detail to the shirt, adding some watered down brown paint, streaking it all over the place, making it look dirty and zombie-like. Really liking how this is coming out. And then for the final detail, I'm glazing his one eye with some acrylic varnish and his teeth. And he's done. Let me know what you think in the comments. And then also let me know what you want me to sculpt next. And that's a wrap. I really hope you like the zombie. I am so happy with how he turned out, and he was so much fun to make. I know I say that in every video, but it's the truth. Just look at his face. He's just so happy to be here. Anyway, if you haven't seen my first ever YouTube collab with Nerdy Crafter where I made this guy, be sure to check it out. I will link it in the info card section up there and in the description box. The music for this video was provided by Tiff Music. If you like this track, you'll like his other work. I will link everything for him down below. And then if you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Ace of Clay. I'm really trying to get my Twitter moving, so if you got a Twitter, follow me. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one.